Ladies and gentlemen, from The Ringer, Danny Kelly joins us, senior staff writer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show, Ringer NFL Draft Show, all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years. Makers of Manny's, Bodhisattva, Lucille, Rogers, all of it. Tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Danny, let's start there with Russell Wilson. Boy, that was peak Wilson last night.
Classic vintage Wilson, as you said. I mean, the thing that kind of stuck out to me about this, I know this is like silly and maybe a little bit hokey, but it's like it is kind of, it does show you the power of like coaching staff believing in you and putting you in a chance. Because I feel like the well was poisoned almost immediately with Sean Payton, with Russell Wilson in Denver. I mean, I know that he had the season before where it was like the Nate Hackett year. You know, that was just kind of just a messed up situation from like a lot of different angles. Like, I don't think he was just in over his head. And then when Sean Payton came in, I think Payton already started kind of like undermining him right from the start. I remember being at the combine that year and Payton's like telling stories about Russell Wilson going and bugging Drew Brees and how he had to tell him to stop kissing babies and all this stuff. Basically, I don't think Payton ever wanted him. And I don't think Payton ever really believed in him. And so I know this is kind of hokey and whatever, but this is sports. The coaching staff seems to really believe in him. And Russell Wilson is like in a situation now with Arthur Smith where the offense really fits what he wants to do, what he's good at. They marry the run game with the play action game, the defense, and close, quote unquote, the circle of trust, circle of toughness, like Pete Carroll used to always talk about. They do special teams, defense, run game, deep shots. So it's kind of just like it's working for them right now.
It's all of it. I mean, that's going back to his heyday with Seattle, Danny. I mean, the one that I think it was Pickens that didn't score down the sideline late in the game when the Giants had scored. I mean, that was an absolutely gorgeous pass.
Yeah.
And he was on all night long. It just, 20 of 28, 280 touchdown. He looked like he was moving around the pocket okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good for him.
The biggest surprise to me, I think, so far, I've gone back and forth on Russell Wilson and how good he's going to be and all that. I think my big take last year and kind of coming into this year is that he's not all that different than what he used to be. He can still throw the deep ball. He's still obviously got a ton of veteran experience and depending on if teams are going to buy into it, the leadership factor, but he just is not very escapable anymore. He just can't do any of the ground stuff and the Houdini stuff that he used to be able to do. So I've been a little bit surprised to see him escaping pressure, making plays when, you got a pass rusher coming up the gut, he kind of escape and get out of the pocket. He's only taken a handful of sacks so far. The sack thing is the biggest thing. I thought when he came in, he was going to have just too many sacks and it was going to be like really hard for the Steelers offense to operate. And that still could materialize. But I think right now, the fact he's not taking sacks is huge.
Yeah. And that was you touched on. That was the issue, that when people questioned Tomlin for making the decision, they were like, the Steelers offensive line is not good. Fields is saving you.
Right,
He's getting out and scrambling. But I go back to what when you think about what quarterbacks and the plays that they can make from the pocket, you don't have to be the most mobile quarterback in the world. You can beat blitzes and beat pressure all the time and a poor offensive line if you know where to go with the football right away. You can beat that stuff. You don't have to use athleticism. Maybe this is the growth process here for Russell Wilson. Danny, I thought he was done. I thought he was buried. I even said it earlier this year when I think they went to 4-2 and Fields had played okay. And I'm like, this is it. He's done. He'll never see the field. I remember saying he'll never see the field again. And here he is.
Yeah.
And, he is a polarizing figure here. Specifically, because there is people how they feel about him off the field. There's been these stories behind the scenes that maybe he doesn't treat people the right way, that he's a horrible person, all that. I don't know if those are true or not. That's hearsay stuff that I've heard from a cousin who worked at a parking attendant who used to date this girl who they used to drink 40s and smoke blunts with. I just like, okay, maybe he is a bad guy. I have no idea.
Right.
One thing I do know, and I just said it there before you came on, I've never seen anyone, and I wish I could take some of this, who has more of an unwavering belief in themselves.
Unshakable. Yeah.
And he has that.
Yeah. This is an old Mina Kimesism, I think. I don't know for sure if she was the one who came up with this, but I heard her say this. To be a good NFL quarterback, you either have to believe in God or believe you are God. And I think maybe Russell Wilson is both. He's like obviously very he at least talks about, you know, his faith in God a lot, and then he also is just, you know, he thinks he's the best quarterback of all time, probably. Like honestly, like if you asked him in his heart of hearts, I think he believes he's the greatest quarterback of all time. And you kind of have to have that. You have to have no memory of the last play. You have to have no you can't have any doubt. Like the quarterbacks in general, quarterbacks in the NFL there's such a small margin for error for every single play. You can't have that fear. You know, you can't have that. And Russell Wilson talks about this all the time. It's like, I think he says like a neutral state, like his mindset is very neutral whenever he's playing the game. He doesn't get too high, get too low, try to stay neutral, try and like control your emotions, play in the absence of fear. There's been a lot of like, you know, I think stories and interviews written and talked about where he talks about just like, the mindset is so important, the philosophy, and just him staying even keeled and neutral throughout a game. And so I think it's very fascinating, honestly, and it is cool to see him play so well right now. I think the question is like, what happens when they start getting behind in games?
Sure.
Because I think they've had the advantage of good game scripts in the last two games. And so, yeah, we'll see kind of like, at least the last two games have been close the whole game. So like, we'll see if they have to come back, it's going to be a different story. But at the same time, it's like, this team is built to kind of play the style. This is like a Seahawks style team where they're tough, physical. They can rush the passer, they can run the ball, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he went literally to the perfect team,
right?
Because they want to run the ball. They want to control it defensively. They're not asking him to throw it 50 times a game. I mean, what did he throw last 27, 28 attempts? That's the sweet spot for him. I mean, when I saw him, like I'm watching the game, but I'm really watching baseball all night long. And the only reason I'm paying attention to the Monday night game, Danny, is because I had a $100 bet with Jim Moore on the game.
Yeah.
And I have the Steelers -6. So I was just like, when he fumbled late, I was like, you son of a bitch. Really? You're going to cost me $100. But then, of course, Danny Dimes, you know, he throws the pick, and then I'm saved. And Jim Moore owes me another $100. But is that when I looked at his final stat line, I'm like, God, that's his stat line.
Yeah.
That's what makes him the quarter. That was anytime you looked when the Seahawks won, I bet we could find that stat line right there. 20 of 28, 280 yards, maybe not that many yards, but a touchdown, no picks.
217 yards.
Yeah. I mean, that was it. That was his line every time.
I still remember, I go back to this interview that Pete Carroll gave right after they won the Super Bowl against Denver. And he was just talking about like, you know, we're not asking Russell to like throw for a ton of yards. Like we want the whole team to be involved, special teams, running. Yeah. You know, the Steelers scored a special team. They had a punt return touchdown. They had a couple turnovers created on defense, and then Russell Wilson took care of the ball. He did fumble in this game, but that was a really good play by the defender.
Yeah.
And you know, he took care of the ball for the most part. He distributed it to his playmakers. I love the fact he's getting George Pickens involved. He's getting Calvin Austin involved. He's getting other guys kind of involved. Darnell Washington's all of a sudden kind of like coming on, and they're utilizing him in the play action game. I think, it's just like an extension of that Pete Carrollism, that Pete Carroll style of football, where it's just like you have all three phases working together, and then you're not asking the quarterback to do too much. The whole premise of Pete Carroll's program was basically like, we don't want to have to give the quarterback too much responsibility because it's a really freaking hard job. And it's like really, really hard to be consistent at the quarterback position over the long term. Like only a few guys can do it. And if we don't have that guy, I want to be able to win still. So, I see a very similar style with the Steelers right now.
What do you make of he was his backup here in Seattle? What have you made of Geno here in the last few weeks? I mean, the play and the play is one thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to blame him too much. I mean, he doesn't have an offensive line to work. They can't do anything because they can't block. But his frustration is I mean, it's real evident. I mean, it's real public now. I mean, it's boiling over to the sidelines. The frustration throwing the football at a player. What have you made of what you've seen the last few weeks from him?
I know I've seen people talking about it. I know you talked about the throwing the thing at the player. It didn't like in the moment, it didn't bug me that much. I think it's more just like the team is frustrated. There's a very fine line for me of people of watching a team and watching a game and having like, I want my players to have like a little bit of an edge and like give a shit, and really care. because if he's just like walking around like emotionless, like that's also kind of a negative. Like, but there's a fine line between like taking it too far. Like when he threw the ball at the guy's head, probably shouldn't have done that. But I didn't really freak out about it. I didn't think it was a huge deal. For the most part, like the offense hasn't been the problem, honestly. Like for the most part in this game, think about how different things would have swung if they scored those 2 goal line touchdowns. There was the one where they had the center throw the ball over his head by about 30 feet. I don't know how that happens. How does that happen?
I don't know, man. I've been thinking a lot about that. I don't know how he did that. I really don't know.
Did he have a muscle spasm right at the moment he was trying to snap the ball? And it was bizarre. And then of course you get another play down at the 1 yard line where he steps on his foot on 4th down. And you run those 2 plays differently, and it's a completely different narrative. So like I'm not overreacting to the way that Geno reacted in that game. I think.
Yeah, let me just jump in. I mean, just think about where the game goes, right? They score there on the snap that goes over his head, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of getting a field goal, they get a touchdown. Okay, so what is that? 7 or no? That's 7. It's 7-7, right? Because they ended up with the field goal there, right?
Yeah, okay. It was 7-3. Yeah.
Okay, so then they turn around, then they get the pick. They say go and score in there. I mean, there's a scenario where they're 14-7.
Mm-hmm. It's a totally different game.
And I think into the half.
This game got away from them. You see this happen in the NFL all the time. The game got away from them, and they started getting frustrated. And honestly, like the Bills are a better team. Like, let's just be honest. They got beat by a really good team and a really good quarterback. And I to me, it's still more just like I am not too worried about Geno. I think obviously there's been a few picks in the last few weeks that have been frustrating, but like the one pick got tipped twice. You know, it's like this is kind of just unfortunate thing that happens. I know that a few of the picks have been on Geno, but for the most part, like, you know, I think he's one of the bright spots for this team this year, and I'm not going to freak out too much about him, you know, getting frustrated on the sideline. I do think, generally speaking, the team needs to have a few more leaders step up. I think when you watch like the defense, like who's the leader of the defense? Like, does someone stick out to you?
No, I mean, I would say Jaron Reed. I mean, because
what he did on the sidelines there when was it Derek Hall?
Derek Hall
had the late hit,
and that's the funny thing is like I'm a hypocrite. We're all hypocrites as sports fans. Like I'm telling like, hey Geno, I need you to be. It's the difference because I think quarterbacks need to be more like politicians than anything.
But we used to rag on Wilson for being like that. I know,
but I kind of like that with
fine line.
But then I love Jaron Reed going after Hall.
Yeah.
And I totally get it. The game is, you know, it's an emotional game. Yeah. So I guess I'd answer your question. I would say Reed.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, I not to just single out one side of the ball because I think obviously the offense made some mistakes in this game too, but like the defense is just not playing very well. No. Not tackling, not, you know, getting in gaps, giving up big plays. Too many penalties. Like the penalties the Seahawks have had in the last few weeks have been really frustrating to me. Like especially that Hall penalty in particular stood out. But you know, I think just overall they're a sloppy team right now, and it's really frustrating to watch, especially when they're playing a really good team. So I think they have a lot of things to clean up on defense in particular. I think the offense has been pretty solid for the most part. Like, you know, obviously there's some things you'd like them to clean up, and I think the discipline and consistency in penalties is a big one. But like, especially losing DK Metcalf in this game, like to me, the defense is much more worrisome, you know, right now. And like, just you'd like to see that side of the ball have more leaders emerge, played a little more together, because right now it just feels like there's a collection of guys on the team rather than like a cohesive unit. So yeah, I like when I watch those games, I'm just like more frustrated with the defense right now.
How were they worse off than they were last year? I mean, the whole reason you fired Pete Carroll to bring in Mike Macdonald was to solve this defense. The defense is worse than it was last year.
Yeah,
it's amazing to me. I can't even believe it. And think about this, Danny. Had they not played Bo Nix week 1, had they not played the Dolphins without Tua, and had they not played Jacoby Brissett, it'd be worse. It'd be dead last in every statistical category.
Yeah. I don't know. It is a good question. I think you know, obviously I'm more than willing to give Macdonald some time to get this figured out. Like it's, you know, 7-8 games in or whatever it is, 8 games in. So, you know, there's obviously a learning curve Pete Carroll, went 7-9 his first season. Took him a while to like get everything going. Obviously, they had the really weird, dramatic playoff run in his first year, but that's kind of a an outlier. And I think when you look at Macdonald, when he was with the Ravens his first year, they were not very good defensively, and when in second year they really took off. I think this is that type of defense where it might take a little bit of time, and also like they don't have any good linebackers, and they've been like trying to shuffle the deck a little bit to try and get the situation fixed, and it's not going to happen overnight. You have a linebacker come in and play. I think he had like 15 tackles or something like that in his first game. Like, so obviously, there's some talent deficiencies. I think that there is a lack of like really strong leadership right now, at least like from my point of view. I'm not down there on the field or whatever, but like it doesn't look like there's like a very clear leader. They've got guys with too many penalties. Like, I don't know. I think there's variables holding this defense back right now, and maybe Mike Macdonald is a part of that as well. But like, I think there's just a talent deficiency that we are maybe not just going to get fixed right away.
When you what comes to mind when you watch Leonard Williams play?
I thought I haven't gone back and like watched all 22 with the Seahawks defense a whole lot this year, but like my impression is that he's been pretty darn good. What would you say? Before he came on, like I'm watching that game on Sunday, and I mean, again, you don't want to focus in on one guy. It's never just one guy on the defense, but right.
I come away with games sometimes wondering, a lot of times wondering, like, did he play today?
Right.
I know it's just terrible, but I'm just like, I don't know. We tend to equate money spent on players in value and all that. I just think they did spend draft capital on him, picks, and then they spend on him. They give him $64 million, 43, 44 guaranteed. And I just don't see anyone on this line. Not to say that Murphy can't develop into that, but for Williams, I don't see a game wrecker. I mean, there are flashes, but it's just not consistent.
Yeah. Let's see. So I'm looking at PFF grading. I know that this isn't the be all end all or whatever.
I know. I have a love hate with PFF because it's just, and I look at it too, but
it's tough. Right now he's ranked 14th among defensive interior players out of 121. So like, I think generally speaking, I think he's been pretty good. I would say like, I'm pretty encouraged with what the defensive line has done, at least from a pass rush point of view. Like they've generated quite a bit of pressure. I think their pressure rate is up dramatically from where they were last year. I think with any defense, though, there's weak links in the chain, and right now we're seeing like in coverage, it hasn't been excellent. Tackling hasn't been excellent. Against the run hasn't been excellent. I think the middle linebacker situation, or the linebacker situation in general, is not been great. So I don't know. I think it's just like to play a really really high level on defense right now, you have to have like studs at all three levels. You have to have big time leadership. You have to have really good coaching, and it's really hard to play defense in the NFL with.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah, for 100%. And I'm wondering, I mean, they got rid of Baker. They brought in Ernest Jones. I mean, I don't know, what they truly feel about Dotson. I don't know if time's running out on Dotson. They don't really have what would they put Gibson in there, the rookie out of UTEP? I don't know if that's an option for them. But, I mean, it's just, there's a play last week where I think Cook bounces it to the outside. He's right there to make the tackle. He fills the hole. And it's just doesn't do anything. And it's like, they just don't have anybody, right? They don't have.
I think the corner, like honestly, like I thought the cornerback spot would be a little bit more of a bright spot this year than it has been. I think this is me not like studying the tape really closely, but like I've come away from the last few games like, man, that was kind of a frustrating play. I think you pointed out a Reek Woolen play that I noticed on the live game replay or whatever, that he basically pushed a guy into the end zone. I'm like,
I mean, Kincaid.
Thanks for the boost, guy. Like,
I still can't. I go back and watch, and I'm like, because I was arguing with Jim yesterday. Jim's like, he didn't push him in the end zone. I'm like, what are you watching? Like,
kind of looked like it to me, like not
he shoved him in the back into the end zone.
Not that he maybe was like he was in a terrible position to do anything from that point of view. Like, but. Thanks for the boost. Thanks for the little, shove momentum boost into the end zone. There's just been a handful of plays like Witherspoon hasn't been playing like a star.
Yeah.
And you'd really like to him. And I think he has that in him. I think he's a like fantastically talented player.
Yeah.
But far too many times I've just been like finding myself annoyed with him. So that's the kind of thing where it's just like a few small things on defense right now. And it can kind of like create a snowball effect where everything kind of goes poorly.
Hey, we got to get at the end of this before you go. We got to do our Barge of the Week. We're going to bring it back. We're doing the Barge of the Week. Last week we put the Niners on the Barge, and then now the Niners look like the Niners again. But we can bring them back.
Who are you going to resuscitate here? Yeah.
We can bring it. We can always bring them back. We can bring the Niners back. The Niners can get. They've allowed themselves the tugboat. The rescue boat has gone out and has saved the Niners off of the barge that we put out to the Pacific Ocean. But before we get there. Are you over Hail Mary coverage yet? Jesus Christ. It was a Hail Mary. I mean, I flip on these shows in the morning everywhere. Like I flipped the ESPN show on Get Up. It's another day of breaking down the strategy of the Hail Mary. Then I'm like, okay, man, I'm kind of over this. I don't want to hear about it. It's a Hail Mary. It's luck.
You're chucking it up as high as you can, as far as you can.
There's no strategy.
There's a very tiny bit of strategy. Okay. A lot of time it's like pure luck. Yeah.
And then I flip over. I'm like, well, maybe Good Morning Football. They're not going to feed into this, are they? What do? That's the same thing.
I mean, there's an actual
Hail Mary fatigue, Danny.
There's a reason we use the expression "throw up a Hail Mary." Like it doesn't. It's a prayer. It's a literal prayer. You're hoping for divine intervention, or in this case, a player just talking crap to the crowd and like not paying attention.
That was so good.
I mean, that was like an all-time bonehead play. Like he's talking crap to the. Can we swear on this? By the way,
you can swear. Of course, you can.
He's talking shit to the crowd, and literally like 3 or 4 seconds into the play, he's still got his back turned to the play. Like
so good.
Come on, get your head on a swivel. And then he comes in and like bats the ball in the air to the guy that I think my buddy Ben Solak pointed this out. I think he was supposed to be guarding Noah Brown. Like he was supposed to be boxing Noah Brown out. Instead, he's talking shit to the crowd. Comes in and bats it directly to the guy who he's supposed to be guarding. Maybe one of the all-time bonehead plays. Like I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna remember like the ball going off of Canseco's head for a home run. Like give me some other big bonehead plays. Like I obviously like the Russell Wilson interception, that kind of stuff.
Chris Webber calling a timeout.
100%
national championship.
Yeah. So, the Buckner going through the legs, whatever. Like there's like some all time bonehead plays in sports. I think this has to go down as one of them. Like just hilarious turn of events for this guy.
What do you got? Fantasy football waiver wire pickup day. Tuesday's a huge day. Fantasy football. What do you got for those needing help, Danny? Help them out. What do you got?
Man. So the running back situation is kind of dire and on the waiver wire this week. I guess Braylon Allen for the Jets would be my top ad, just because he has that flex with benefits type of role where he can potentially give you an option as a flex option in your lineup, but also if Breece Hall ever went down, he'd have league winning upside. Cedric Tillman for the Browns in the receiver position looks really good. In fact, Elijah Moore also are probably like my top 2 pickups at the receiver spot with the way that Jameis Winston is playing, with the way he opens up the offense. This is a whole new offense without Deshaun Watson. Browns fans got to be pretty ecstatic about this. Obviously no one likes to root for injuries, but I feel like everybody in Cleveland probably pretty happy right now.
Yes.
And then Ricky Pearsall for the 49ers. He has a bye this week, but he's a good stash at the moment just because he looked pretty good in his first game. So some pretty good receivers on the waiver wire this week. And then I'd say a tight end, pretty slim pickings. Taysom Hill would be my top choice just because the way that they utilize him in the red zone, deep red zone, right by the goal line, he's going to get a lot of carries on the goal line. He is lining up as a receiver. He's lining up in the slot. He's lining up in the backfield. He threw a pass in this last game. He does a little bit of everything for him. And if Derek Carr comes back this week, which I think he will, he could have a little bit of a boost there in that offense as well. So there's just not a lot on the waiver wire with tight ends.
Do you have a nominee? Danny and I are doing this every week. We're going to put a player or a team, a fan base, a mascot, a broadcaster. I don't care who it is. We're going to put them on the barge. Last week we put the 49ers on the barge. I thought it was they responded by beating the Cowboys, and we sent out the rescue crew, and they have brought the 49ers back. Do you have a nominee for the barge this week?
What about Connor Williams?
Oh yeah, I could put Connor Williams on the barge.
I mean, let's be honest. Two colossal mistakes. Well, I guess I don't know. Like stepping on his foot is a colossal mistake.
Oh yeah, it is.
But two pretty egregious errors in this last game. Maybe going out on the barge for a minute will turn his luck around.
We can put him out on the barge, and we can always bring him back. We don't have anybody that can play center right now for the Seahawks, so that would be good.
Got to bring him back by Sunday.
You got to bring him back by Sunday. Here's a nominee for the barge for me. I'm going to put Anthony Richardson on the barge. Yeah. He has officially been benched today. They're going with Joe Flacco.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
this is happening live. Oh,
they just announced it that Anthony Richardson has been benched because he admitted afterwards, after the game, that he pulled himself out of the game on a third down play because he was tired. People are losing their minds.
I think this is a similar thing to like the Geno Smith thing. I don't want to like overreact to it, but I've literally never seen that. I've never seen maybe I'm wrong. Someone can pull up like a obscure video from some time. I don't remember a quarterback pulling himself out because he was tired ever in my life.
I'm
especially
conflicted.
Like on third down. Like, what are you doing, man?
Well, it was third and long.
Right.
20 plus. They said they were just going to hand the ball off too, which they ended up doing.
He wouldn't have known that. Like he's tapping his helmet like as he's getting up from being on the ground. Like he doesn't know they're going to run the ball.
I don't know how you can't have your quarterback tapping out of a game, man.
It's an incredibly bad look. Yeah. I still believe in Richardson, honestly. Yeah. Like I think he just needs development. This is exactly what we said when he was coming out of college. He had I don't know, 11 starts to his name or whatever. And so it's like development is going to be a big deal here. He needs to be developed. I understand from the Colts point of view, they need to they need to make a decision based on all the other 52 players on that active roster right now. And in terms of like, we're going to try and win games. It's like the Deshaun Watson situation. Like the Browns they weren't trying to win. They were trying to justify a contract. And the Colts, I think, they feel obviously like they need to do what they're doing right now to win rather than to develop their quarterback, which you could argue is counterintuitive or counterproductive. But that was a really tough look. I've never seen that before. I swear that was one of those situations where I was like, just make it up, man. Just like say that you hurt your shoulder or something, and then you're like, actually, I was fine. I came back in.
Just tired, just needed a break. Go take a knee like in Pop Warner. Dude. All right, Danny, you're the best. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good.
There he is. Danny Kelly joins us every single Tuesday talking Seahawks, NFL, fantasy football. You can, of course, follow Danny on Twitter at Danny B. Kelly, senior staff writer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show, Ringer NFL Draft Show, all brought to you by the great folks there at Georgetown Brewery, makers of Manny's Pale Ale. They've been doing it for 23 years. They got Bodhisattva, Lucille, Rogers Pilsner, and a host of your other favorite beers. Tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Danny's episode will be up on YouTube, also on Apple and Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts, and of course up at pucksports.com. Please like